What's up, guys? My name's Nicole Rios, and I've got opinions. Thanks for joining me today on my Monday monologue. Glad to have you here. I hope you tuned in to my session this morning with Matthew. We had a great time talking tomorrow's elections. We had a lot of opinions, a lot of laughs, and I think that it will be a really interesting day tomorrow when we see how these elections pan out. And we will be back together on Wednesday with an after action kind of review. We're going to debrief a little bit, talk about what we learned, who won, what our takeaways are. So please come back for that on Wednesday. Today's Monday monologue is going to be focused on the economy. I think it's a really interesting phenomena that has been happening. And I don't think this is specific to right now. I think it's probably something that has happened over time for a long time. But we all know it as the separation of upper class and middle class kind of sinking down into that lower class. And I think that when we see the government shutdown happening and we see benefits stopping and we realize how many people are on benefits and how many people might be facing a hardship in the next couple of months while we're looking at holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up, that we're really going to feel the impact of the economy more than we have before because we are going to be making big meals for family and buying gifts and celebrating, and there's expectation for spending. And our economy is hopeful that we will be spending. And so I think it's a really important thing to look at because I people are saying economy is great, and I have this little inkling like, I'm not buying it. Kinda, but no. Grocery prices are still really expensive. And while I think that gas has come down and hopefully energy prices will continue to come down, I think that the reality is for most of us that aren't in that upper tier bracket of income, we are feeling it. And like I've said before, I am looking out at Christmas from this point, 8 weeks out, knowing that I have to be really careful so that I can have enough money to provide my family the Christmas that I'm hoping to, and to be able to travel to go see my family. And all of these things come at a price. And we need to be honest about what it's costing the American these days. It's not helpful for Republicans to deny that price and affordability is an issue. That's why Mamdani is being so successful in New York, is because this message is relatable. Affordability is a relatable message for an American these days. And I think that really needs to be addressed. I think the other things that are going to be coming into play here are right now, specifically with the government shut down, SNAP benefits aren't being paid out. If that happens through the end of the month, we're talking about families that will be missing Thanksgivings, or won't be able to put as much on the table as they would like to. And that is a very sad feeling for me as an American to think about more families than usual going without a proper Thanksgiving meal. Um, and if we are assuming that the shutdown is going long enough for those benefits not to be paid out, we're basically at December 1st. And that is two more checks for federal workers who won't be paid. Again, a huge issue that will impact a lot of people who we are relying on their loyalty to the country to be in these federal jobs doing these things for our country for the benefit of our country. And I just feel like these probably aren't the people to be developing bad blood with. We don't want our TSA agents feeling resentment towards the United States of America. I don't think that's unreasonable to say. So let's get it together. On top of the government shutdown, we're facing this looming healthcare deadline, right? And as I said before, yes, this is a cut back from emergency appropriations that were made during COVID. We're just returning to a baseline prior to 2020, and we were going back to the same way it was before. It hurts to have things taken away. I agree. There are people who will see their premiums raise, and there are people that may have to drop out of the marketplace. And that obviously exposes the real problem that we have with Obamacare. What it doesn't say is that those people don't have access to care anymore. Those same people will have access to private plans or have access to plans through their employers. With that being said, we are again looking at a situation where if somebody's healthcare premium is going to be raising by $1,000 a month for their family, it's highly likely, and I know many people who do, people will pull out of the marketplace. They will pay for insurance for their children to have health insurance and be covered, but they will not pay for themselves or their spouse to be covered. We will have a large group of people who will go back into an uninsured pot. It can have one of two effects. It increases the premiums for the people who are remaining in the risk pool because it's likely that a lot of the people that are healthy are going to be the ones that decide they can probably live without the health insurance. So the ones that leave the risk pool are going to be of the healthier. So then the risk pool that's left is going to be more likely for disease and more risk prone, which would cause an insurance company to raise a premium anyway. So that's a negative factor. That's definitely a problem. Secondarily, is that the amount of subsidized plans that we have in the marketplace right now is going to change. The subsidies that we're paying out is going to change. And so all of the offered plans right now are shifting, which is why a lot of people are getting notices in the mail and why open enrollment is starting, because a lot of these plans had to restructure knowing that their risk groups were going to be changing. So that is why we've seen and heard about all these premiums rising for such a long time, because these changes were anticipated. However, people having to choose to be insured for healthcare or not be insured for healthcare is a triggering feeling to an American. If you know that you are choosing not to have health care so you can put food on the table or pay the heating bill this winter, that's a major trigger. That is a feeling that makes you feel like you're not making it. That is what makes Americans feel like they are choking. So we have to be honest about this. If fuel and gas is down, maybe we don't have to pay so much for heating, but maybe those are things we should be highlighting. Maybe those are the things that we should be championing. That while we're going into a difficult season and while we may not have as much control over the levers of food prices, say, which is the hurting point right now, we might be able to treat energy as a balancing lever. And if we can just champion the energy thing, I think we can get refocused. But we really have to figure out how to balance it, because ideally in economics, we think about energy being the main mover, right? If we can cheapen energy, then we can also cheapen the cost of goods by cheapening the production. And if the production is cheaper, then the people will have less to charge for. So it creates a benefit for everybody. And then the cost of the product comes down. Well, that's great. But now I'm seeing things like, okay, well, glad we're getting all the illegal CDL drivers off the road, but like, hey, we need drivers to transport goods. If we have a lack of drivers, then that is going to increase the demand and it's going to increase the price of shipping. Okay. So we have to look at how all of these things are interacting, because if we go too fast and break too many things all at once, again, obviously American safety is super important, and getting people that can't read English signs or obey the laws of our roads off from having commercial driver's licenses, yes, that's great. And let's employ more Americans and get more American drivers on the road. Yes, that's great. But the reality of this situation is there's a training lag there. There's a period of time where those truckers need to go to school and get certified to have the CDL license. And if there is no coverage for that time period, then we're boosting shipping, domestic shipping prices through the roof during that period. And we're not quite to the point where autonomous vehicles are taking over the brunt of it. So while we can look long term and say, yes, long term, we may have the ability to do autonomous shipping and get self driving vehicles into the shipping sector. But right now, we're not there. That's not happening at this moment on grand scale. So we have to be realistic with the levers that we're pulling and not just go on vibes, y'all. We can't just find one little thing that gets the base riled up and then just ride that wave until the ocean's dry. We have to be strategic. We need some tact. So just eyes wide open, y'all, because we really have to be, if we're going to be successful, we have to be strategic, and strategy requires that we all are looking with eyes wide open objectively at all of the things that are coming into play and having a logical and rational discussion about it without letting emotions derail us. My 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 main thing is going to be that while we can look at this as strategists and as analysts in a way that allows us to view it that way, the voter is looking at this emotionally. So it's our rationale that needs to structure this in order to speak to an emotional voter. Emotional voters don't have rational abilities. Okay. You have to make a really good point to stick it. So we have to be looking at this in an honest way. If we tell voters no, what you feel and what you believe isn't real, we're not going to get anywhere. That doesn't help anybody. But if we can admit, yes, food actually hasn't come down, it's really hard to actually have an impact on pricing in private industry. And I think that Trump kind of coming out and, well, prices will come down first day. I think that is probably why we haven't been able to walk that back at all. But the reality of the situation is that we are pushing on the energy. Hopefully the energy has the impact that on the production, the means of production for the food, that will eventually bring the food pricing down. But when we're still stuck with a decent amount of inflation, it's really hard to see prices come down, seriously, unless you're having a massive impact on one of the like forms of production. You're not going to see a huge impact in pricing change overnight, which is unfortunate. And but the reality is that when it comes to a lot of commodities, there are just increases in production costs that can't be mitigated by energy. And so we are where we are on that one. But if we can focus on the other things that people are also needing and frame it as we are still seeing benefits, then we can keep moving in the right direction. The other thing that I want to talk about is, uh, as we see, consumer spending right now isn't showing terrible. It's not growing at the same rate as it was last year, but it's not off by a lot. Again, we're so fresh into the government shutdown, a significant amount of people not receiving monthly benefits or paychecks, and it's kind of like the early sting of some kind of like tariff impacts on certain goods. And I look at this and I look at a couple of levers. The first lever I'm going to talk about is going to be the unemployment lever. Unemployment is a funny number because we all assume just by what it's called that it just talks about how many people in the country don't have a job. That's not the case, actually. Unemployment is a number that measures how many people are actively seeking a job but don't have one. If you have left the job market, if you've decided, I've tried to get a job for 6 months and I can't find one, so I'm going to go back to my mom's basement and I'm going to apply for benefits and I'm going to chill. That person is not considered in the unemployment rate. That person has been exited the job market. And so, therefore, we don't consider those people unemployed, which I think is haha funny. But so when we look at our unemployment number being 4.3, I think is our current number, 4% is an acceptable rate of unemployment. It means that if there were a new company to build up, that they would have a decent amount of market to pull from for employees, or if there was perhaps a certain company that went under and a lot of people were laid off, it's not so high that in addition to the unemployment group would make a huge impact. Now, I think that the clarifying point that's important here is that who's considered to be unemployed and who isn't. And so when we look at our unemployment number, it's great, but it's not tracking all of those kids who graduated college 5 years ago, never got an actual real job. COVID came, forget about it. Everybody worked from home, everybody laid off, and that transitioned into a huge population of people who just transitioned onto benefits or social security or disability or unemployment or whatever it is. And we see that in the kind of data that came out showing that in in 2020 we had like 19 million people on SNAP benefits, and now we have 42 million. So that is a huge jump. We've seen that literally over that same period of time. And so what I'm trying to point to is that we probably have a much greater number of able-bodied working people who are able to work, who are not working, who are not considered in our unemployment percentage number. Okay. That I think is the ghost of the market. Nope. That's the thing we're not looking at. The second thing that I think is interesting to point out is that AI is a significant part of our current GDP. When we talk about how productive we are as a nation and how much money we are creating, AI is like 30% of that right now. What I think is interesting is that AI's percentage of that is basically in subscriptions and usage subscriptions, and us paying for Chat GPT, or us having a AI uh, assistant at work within our company, or you know AI companies building out specific tools for corporations. All of those things, that is how AI is becoming productive in our economy. Now, normally productive in our economy means that like we add a thing, we add value in some way, we create a product or whatever. Okay, a service, mostly service right now for America. But the thing about AI is that it doesn't necessarily create value, it's not necessarily productive, it just adds value to a human's productivity. So right now, AI isn't really valuable beyond being used by a human. There are some uses, autonomous uses right now that are getting there, but again, without human interaction or interface or programming or um, coding, or us giving a robot a job or something to act on, it's not self-run, it's not like actually productive. So until we get to the point where we're like buying robots and having somebody doing all our dishes and all of our chores like Jetsons style, okay, until we get there, AI is not quite like productive in the economy. We're offering services, we're like adding on productivity to humans, but it's not necessarily like creating a huge value. We're putting a lot of money into the hopeful value, and we're also putting a lot of money into the hardware version of AI, which is our chips and our data centers and all of the rare earths. Okay, that if we consider like AI is the software and all of that stuff is the hardware, we need both to make it go. So we are, that is another side of it that's kind of productive, that's actually productive, right? It's mining, it's processing, it's all of this stuff. The problem is that stuff isn't happening in America. It's dirty, we don't want to be involved in it, we've outsourced it for those reasons. Which again, I think is so funny. We act like, listen, the environment is the global environment. Just because we outsource something like to across the world doesn't mean we're still not breathing that same air, y'all. silliness. EPA is like, oh, well, we have these certain regulations so that we can get into this deal with these 5 countries. And then, like, we're just shipping our stuff to, like, Thailand so they can, like, just put rot into the atmosphere anyway. It's ridiculous. Anyway, but we're the good guys on that situation, though. So, okay. So, productivity. I think that is the one thing that we really have to be focused on, because I think that if it's not productive, even though it's adding value in the market via people are paying to use it, it's there's a gap. There's a gap between what it is actually valued right now and what the money being put into the market for it is for its hardware. It's for the things, it's for the chips, it's for the production aspects, the batteries. And so this, it feels to me like the beginning of the internet, right? We went out and we laid all this fiber line and we got all prepped, and then it was kind of like, oh man, we kind of jumped the gun. And so I feel like a lot of this infrastructure is happening, but a lot of the recent stuff that's coming out is like the last couple of versions of AI coming out have not been better than the previous versions. We're on like version like 6 and 7 of some models, and I am like back using 4 because I just don't think they've gotten any better. They're not better. And they've also realized that the way they thought they would be able to use AI to create new AI and kind of to create more development within AI is not working. They are not able to use AI to develop itself further in the speed in which they anticipated. And so we're going to come up against a couple of like roadblocks on this that we're going to have to pay attention to, because listen, we can be real about AI replacement of jobs. Right now, I think that mostly AI is just enhancing jobs. Like I was saying, they're being used in corporations as tools, as assistants, as workflow efficiency models. And I think those are all great tools. That does help us get our jobs done better and more quickly and more efficiently, as long as they're working properly. But there's downside to that. We can't rely on that stuff too much. It is flawed. It still messes up. We should still double check it. It's not God. It doesn't know the ultimate truth or something. All of the models that we're using right now are just sourcing from available data banks. So if we have a model that sources from the internet and the majority of the news stations on the internet are liberal leaning, then guess what? All of what it sources from is liberal leaning. And so it's still going to give you an answer with a bias because it's a language model. It searches what it has available to it. And so until we build up data centers, which will eventually hold brains for AI, essentially is stored data that the AI can use for inference, we don't have we don't have anything to go on. And so we have to get these data centers up. Data centers are being voted down by locals in almost every area where they're trying to get in. We have to talk about the power situation because we're trying to get energy down, but the reality of the situation is AI takes a ton of energy. Those data centers take a ton of energy, and we are just not being as productive energy wise as we need to. Moving forward in energy, we really need to be looking at solar. Solar is one of the most productive forms of energy right now, and our problem is that we don't have access to the production of solar panels, and China does. And so this is another thing with the rare earths and all of the super refined production mechanisms that we have abandoned in the last decade, that we have now realized that this is a major issue and we should prioritize this in our markets, and we should really push towards making deals that benefit us in rare earths and figuring out how to not be absolutely bent over when it comes to rare earths and chips and all of the manufacturing that we need for tech. So, as far as the manufacturing thing is concerned, you can keep all of your textiles, you can keep all of the other stuff. What I want in the United States reshored is I want weapons here, I want pharmaceuticals here, and I want tech here. And as long as we have that stuff, I'm good. America's good. Nobody's messing with us. But the second somebody has a chokehold on any one of those three things when it comes to the manufacturing of, or the access of, or the acquiring of, we've made a massive mistake. We have massively miscalculated. So, my eye is on how people feel, A, okay? People are coming into the holidays, if they don't have enough money for food, or when they go to the grocery store and it comes down to buying one box of potatoes or two, and they have to choose one because everything's too expensive, that's going to hurt the American. When it comes down to not being able to buy more than one bottle of champagne, may sound dumb, that's going to hurt the American. When it comes down to not being able to shop for your children for Christmas and the way you want to, or going to the store and noticing that toys are twice as expensive as you want or they used to be, and so now you have to pinch, that's going to hurt the average American. And I can tell you there's a much greater percentage of people out there like that than are being hurt. Okay? I would not consider me and my husband to be a lower income family. We are both working professionals. My husband has a solid career. I have a solid career. The reality of the situation is that for the past 3 or 4 years, there's at least a couple things every week on the grocery list that I don't buy because we can't afford it. Or there's at least a rotation of a couple of things that I wait a couple weeks before I get it and put it back in the pantry. Another thing is I used to be able to go to the store and I'll get 2 cans of beans when I'm grabbing beans, and now I just grab the one. So it's these little habits that maybe don't mean that much to some people, but to the people who notice that their habits have had to change, it makes a difference. Um, Secondarily, that unemployment number, y'all. I know that right now the unemployment looks good, and I think that we're gonna have a lot of fluctuation and all of this happening with the deportations. I don't know how many of the illegals that are deporting were actually employed. I don't know what kind of gap this is actually creating. Were those illegals part of that group of people that wasn't considered in the employment market? So many of the illegals that came in and claimed asylum were given benefits like Social Security benefits and EBT, and so those people wouldn't be considered unemployed. So I'm curious to see how that plays out, because we've heard some pretty decent numbers so far. Like I heard like 1.5 million have deported either by self deportation or by ICE. And I think that's a pretty significant number. Okay. I know it's like the smallest percentage or fraction of the total, but it's not nothing. So there's that. Um, Especially when we're talking about, 10 months. Again, not nothing. That there's actual people and humans that have to make all of that happen. So let's be real. Anybody who's worked in a large organization knows that that is a massive, massive project with huge legal ramifications and massive complications, both from the public and the protesters and the judges, all the same. Okay, so let's give them a little grace on that for people who are not happy with the number so far. We'll get there, trust me. So I also think that the more that we feel coming into 2026 on the economy and the beginning of the year, it's gonna sour people for the election. So we need to get on it. I know we had another quarter percentage point drop from the interest rates from the Fed. So I guess that's good. I mean, you guys, here's the thing is that the problem with the Fed and economic numbers and interest rates is that all of that is done retroactively. You're looking at information from like basically not even just the quarter ago, but like 2 quarters ago. And so you're looking at trends retroactively and then trying to make future policy based on historical trend. And so it gets really sketchy sometimes because it's almost like by the time the Fed makes a response, sometimes it's already like 6 months too late from what the data was actually showing. And so it's really hard to make a good policy choice when you're coming from behind, when you're 6 months behind all of the trends that have gotten you to where you are. And so while I hope that this interest rate cut does something good for us, I think that the hope is probably that it in fact it helps consumer spending through the holidays, and that we don't have a negative taste in our mouth coming into 2026, because it won't look good. It won't feel good. The Republicans will be not in a very good place at all. And it is to nobody's benefit to be sitting out here and trying to tell everybody that the economy is great, because that is what pissed us off about Biden's behavior. And the economy isn't great. And while, the economy 21 to 25 wasn't really Trump's fault, like you still have to realize that it doesn't matter whose fault it was. The middle class and lower class American has still lived through it for the last 4 years. So we still feel it. It doesn't matter who's at the top. This is still our day-to-day experience. And so you can't undercut our experience to be like, yeah, but it wasn't my fault. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not about whose fault it was in the past. It's about where are we going from here? What is the positive message you can spin? Instead of pointing fingers in the past, we need to project power and strength into the future. We need to talk about what's going right. We need to talk about what is happening at the economy. And if we don't have a plan, y'all, outside of the tariffs, yes, the tariffs are great. I'm happy for the tariffs. But guess what we don't know about the tariffs? We don't have any legal structure or anything as to how these tariffs are to be used, or how they're going to be taxed, or where they're going to be held, or who's in charge of them. And this is all why we were talking about getting the External Revenue Service going, because we need somebody that's going to figure out that bank account. We at least need a controller. And then we need Congress to decide, when it comes to the tariffs, how are they to be spent? Who decides that? That's just that's just Trump? No. Congress is the power of the purse. So I'm like, oh, he should be spending the tariff money on the SNAP benefits, and he should be spending the tariff money on paying the troops. And it's like, it doesn't work that way, y'all. You imagine the corruption if a world leader could just take tariff money and throw it on anything they wanted. Like, that's not the way it works. And I don't believe that. We all know how half-cocked this whole thing was. I don't believe they had a whole plan written out specifically on how they were going to deal with the tariff money once it came in. This is like agile. This is like project management training, where it's like sometimes you go and you figure it out as you're doing it. Sometimes you don't always have the end game figured perfect. Sometimes we are just rolling with it, and it's going to be what it is, and we're going to solve the problems as we go, and that's how we're going to make it happen. And that is very much Trump's cabinet. That's all of that. That is the world right now, y'all. These are high level business people. These are high level managers. These are high level project managers. These are high level deal makers. Like, there is a certain level of performance that is required from these people that is not OG Congress. That is not OG politics. It's not, it is go, push, get more, do better, try better. And I appreciate that. I need somebody hustling for me. But the reality of the situation is that you're going to have a large group of your population during these holidays that are feeling like we didn't get what we were promised. And it's going to be an emotional reaction, because the reality of how these things changes says that it doesn't happen in 6 months. We don't change 4 years of inflation, and we don't change 4 years of printing money during a global pandemic in 6 months. And the problem is that we're tired and we're worn out on it. And now it's kind of like just expensive, and now it's chaotic. And so now, instead of just being expensive, expensive and chaotic. And like it's a lot. It's a lot on the American. And I want to see us succeed. So while again we look at the stock market and it looks great, and if you have stock, mwah, 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 good for you. So happy for you, but so many of us don't. And so while the stock market looks great, my credit card debt looks shit. And a lot of us feel that way. So I just want to say the economy is going to be a massive issue 2026. If we don't see a turnaround in some of the everyday expenditures of Americans, mainly food, and I honestly, again, I don't know how we fix the food problem. It There's no federal pressure that can be placed that people won't cry authoritarian or socialist at, which I agree. I don't want I don't want the boot on the throat of our food industry as far as forcing pricing changes, because capitalism is the best, y'all. Okay, capitalism structures are the best. If we look across the world, I'm not saying they're like perfect, but the most successful nations use it. Okay, so that's all I'm saying. So if we ask capitalism to fix this problem for us, it's just alternatives. It's finding cheaper alternatives, and then firms are forced to drop prices to stay competitive. And again, if we play the economic line, then what they're gonna argue is energy. And if energy is cheaper, then the alternatives are gonna be cheaper, and then everybody has to, maintain their competitive advantage. And maybe it depends on whether the good is elastic or inelastic, but there's a potential that you might be able to get a lower price out. Come on, America. I think that I think that I just want to be real about it, because there's been a lot of conversations about the economy where people think I'm nuts for feeling so nervous, for feeling like the calm before the storm. And I don't think that it's a bad storm. And I'm not saying like, oh my God, everything's going to fall apart. But I'm saying like, y'all better pray, because there's like 10 different moving plate parts here. And we need like this one to drop by 5 degrees and this one to increase by this much, and like everything really needs to come together in a really sweet way to make this magic work. And I am hopeful because what else can I do? um I think I listen, okay, that didn't sound as optimistic as I am. I do think that all of these things will work out for the good. I do think that we are gonna see these things play out the way that they need to play out. I don't think that there's some huge bubble that's gonna pop that's gonna create massive hardship as far as AI is concerned. But I do think that we're gonna have to figure out how to not rely on AI as to be such a high percentage of our GDP in order to maintain productive enough that our inflation doesn't increase. So that would be the concern. If our GDP comes down and we lose production, inflation increases and the value of the dollar drops. And that would be my main concern. So when it comes to our productivity, I want to see some of that manufacturing coming in, and some of that onshoring and the building that's going to happen with a lot of this new investment. That is going to be the buffer of actual skill, actual productive American work that is going to actually create a solid GDP and spread us out a little bit. So I am I'm staying optimistic, as you can see. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it as far as I'm concerned. I really care for the American. I really want us to be able to feel confident and proud of who we are and what we do. And part of that is being hardworking. And so a lot of these people that don't feel proud of being an American, y'all better still pick up an oar and row, because you'll feel proud when you work for something. Listen, something that I'll leave you all with this. Been a trainer for a long time. Was a trainer for a long time. And the one thing that you realize is that you never give a session for free, because nobody cares about something that they don't have an investment in. That free session, people would blow off, they wouldn't show up, it would be completely disrespected. When somebody pays for something, it matters to them. When somebody has an investment into something, they care about it. This is why the business owner takes better care of something than one of their employees would, right? Because they're more invested. And it's it's one of those things that makes me feel like the free ride ends at some point. If you take it for granted for long enough, you lose the value of the work, you lose the value of the honor, you lose the respect of what it means to have it. And that diminishes the culture, because there are people that we should be supporting. There are disabled and needy people that we should be supporting. There are also plenty of people that should get back up on their feet and support themselves. And that is an American. An American is somebody who's resilient, who works hard, who's productive, who grinds it out because that's what they have to do. And the reality of the situation is, I've got 3 jobs right now. My husband has 3 jobs right now. I wouldn't consider us lower income. 5 or 6 years ago, I would have considered us high middle income. And now we're both hustling 3 jobs and we only have 1 child. So I guess there's something to be said about that. Um, that's where we're at, though. And I just think that we need to see a change. We need to see a positive movement. I'm tired of the BS. I'm tired of the pointing fingers. Like, what's the policy? What's the plan? What's the way forward? Get out there and tell me about the External Revenue Service and tell me how you're structuring it and what percentage of the tariff is going to go to each structure of the government. Do something. Do something. Tell me how you're doing something productive for me, because the boo-hooing is going to kill your base. You've got to get up there and show them what you're doing, because yes, you're off, you're traveling, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing, like, get your cabinet secretaries back up there doing briefings on what they're doing, what's being, like, what's the successes. I want to know them. I want, like, 10-minute segments on the news stations by the people that are, like, out there killing it for America. Reinforce our optimism that, like, this matters, that our pain economically matters for the good of the long term. Like, inspire us, yo. Tell us what's up. Tell us what these people are doing. Tell us the good things they're doing. Tell us the impact they're making. Clap, like give a reason to clap. America, USA. It's like, come on. I know it seems lame, but I mean it. Because, like, desperate people get angry, and broke people get resentful. And when that person feels unheard by their leader, you don't get great things. And if you think that the the rioting and the protesting and everything is bad now, like, it doesn't get better when people are hungry and broke forever. um so that's my takeaway. Um Wellness work for the week, y'all. I think I've got to bring it back to this concept of investment. And the reality that if you're not investing into something that you want and you're angry that you don't have it, it's your own fault. Like, there's a little bit of accountability required there. So if you feel like there's something that you want that you don't have, but you've made no actual step towards getting it for yourself, then take a step. Do something. Admit to yourself it's something you want and that you haven't done anything about it and that you want to change it. Step 1. Step 2, plan. Plan something to make a difference about it. Do some research. Is there a class you need to take in order to get there? What is it? What is it? What's the steps you need to get there? What's the first step, and take that step. That's my challenge for you this week. This was great, guys. I love you. I hope you have a good week. I'll see you on Wednesday. Back with Matthew. I hope you guys like him. He's funny. I like him. He's high energy. He is a good match. Um, and we will hash out the elections. Um, and I'll see you later. Thanks, guys. Peace. I hope you have a great week.